Welcome to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Cohen. A busy day on Capitol Hill as Donald Trump is trying to force down the throats of MAGA Republicans this awful budget that's going to add trillions to the deficit, gut Medicaid. It doesn't address the MAGA Republicans who are still in blue states. They're promised to either substantially raise the SALT deduction limit or just eliminate it altogether. It's kind of a total mess there. Meanwhile, MAGA Republicans on the Senate say that they're not supportive of what's going on in the House. And soon we're going to start to get towards issues where we're going to have to raise the debt ceiling or else there's going to be a default on debt. Moody's already downgraded America's credit score for the first time since it was founded in 1917. Donald Trump's done zero deals in 90 days so far. What he did in China was not a deal. It was a capitulation. What he did with the UK, it literally says on the bottom, this is not a binding deal. It didn't do anything at all that a trade deal would normally accomplish. We're also heading to that 90-day mark as well, with zero deals happening in that time. So Trump's been also talking about reimposing the tariffs from the baseline, the reciprocal. Who even knows what the hell he's talking about? But he gave a speech yesterday where he's like, maybe we'll have to raise aluminum and steel back to 100% and 75%. He's really just made the United States of America look like North Korea. And speaking, that's not a good thing. And speaking of which, you had dog killer Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem testifying before the Senate today. And sometimes the best questions, Cohen, are the simplest questions. And I think with these MAGA cabinet members, you really have to go basic and just ask a question like, do you know what habeas corpus is? Like, do you actually know? You know, you want to eliminate it, but you're the Homeland Security Secretary. Do you know what this thing called habeas corpus is that's in the Constitution? Keep it that simple. She did not know. The definition she gave is literally the opposite of what habeas corpus.
It's the exact what that was Congresswoman Shaheen, if I'm not mistaken, who asked that question, correct?
Let's take a look at it and we will see. Yeah, let's take a look at it.
So Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the live free or die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress.
It is so truly right. Yes, it was Hassan, not Shaheen. So my bad. Let me be very clear. As somebody who has gone through the process, everything that Kristi Noem is saying is ignorant. It is a judicial writ. It's an important writ that allows detainees like I was to challenge the government, to challenge the legality of the confinement. If not for that habeas corpus petition that was filed by my incredible lawyer, Danya Perry, I probably would still be in solitary confinement right now. They would find reasons within which to hold me. And this is exactly what Senator Hassan was saying, which is they can hold an individual without cause indefinitely. And all for what? Well, as Alvin K. Hellerstein wrote in his order on my habeas petition, the court finds that respondent's purpose in transferring Cohen from release on furlough and home confinement back to custody was retaliatory in response to Cohen desiring to exercise his First Amendment constitutional right. So it's exactly what we're seeing. And her understanding is so, Ben, what's the word? It's so derelict. I mean, it's beyond ignorance. And it's really, truly a shame, because mainstream media, they don't call this thing out the way that they should. And when they're talking with the president at one of these pressers, they catch him in the hallway, and there's no camera that he's not going to jump in front of to answer. Why not press him? Do you realize that your Homeland Security Secretary doesn't even understand what habeas corpus is? Can I say one more thing? Ben, join me in this one as a fellow attorney. Do you know how many habeas corpus petitions are filed approximately a year?
No, how much?
Approximately 10,000, a little more than 10,000. Do you know what percentage of habeas corpus petitions are actually granted?
1%.
3.2%. So this notion by Stephen Miller and others that this is a way that all of these migrants, that all of these bad people that are infecting and destroying America are able to get out from, incarceration by filing these habeas petitions. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is basically to stop government from doing things which are improper. That's why it's only 3.2%. Look,
she is a cabinet member. Okay, this isn't like a random person, right? She is not just a cabinet member for any topic, a cabinet member on the issues where habeas corpus would be necessary part of your most basic toolkit of knowledge, right? Like, why wouldn't you just, even when and she talks about habeas corpus because they talk about revoking it. Like, why wouldn't you at just some point just Google it? Because you can get asked the question, well, why not even just look into it? And the answer is, it's because this whole Trump regime doesn't give a shit about the Constitution. They just don't care about it. They view it as a meaningless document. They view it as something that can be manipulated if it meets their needs, and something that can be discarded if it doesn't meet their needs. That's their view and perspective of the Constitution. So Democratic Senator Andy Kim had also a very basic question for Noam. And his question is, can you just confirm that you have a basic understanding of habeas corpus? Like, just the most basic. We've now defined for you what it is. Like, do you even know maybe which article in the Constitution? Is it an Article 1 that deals with Congress? Is it Article 2 that deals with the executive branch? Is it Article 3 that deals with the judiciary? Is it an amendment? What is your knowledge of, right? But pretty standard multiple choice question that a third grade person taking civics, at least in the past in the United States, should be able to answer. Here, play this clip.
I wanted to just go back to something that was raised earlier about habeas corpus. Can you confirm to us that you understand that any suspension of habeas corpus requires an act of Congress?
President Lincoln executed habeas corpus in the past with retroactive action by Congress. I believe that any president that was able to do that in the past, it should be afforded to our current day president. This president has never said he's going to do this. He's never communicated to me or his administration that they're going to consider suspending habeas corpus, but I do think the Constitution allows them the right to consider it.
When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those were.
The instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus is in?
I do not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is in Article 1. Do you know which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes.
Which one?
Congress.
Yes.
Oh,
She got the last question. She got the last question right.
1 out of 4 ain't bad. She got a 25 on that exam.
Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, quote, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. That's what it says. And because it's in Article 1, that's why courts say it must relate to Congress being the one who has to suspend it, if anyone, because why else would the framers put it in Article 1? Now, when you think about this is the person who is disappearing migrants without due process, sending them to concentration camps in El Salvador, saying that they should not be entitled to due process. We obviously heard end of last week, the United States Supreme Court addressed a case involving the Alien Enemies Act. It was a somewhat narrow ruling, but they made it very clear that the Fifth Amendment requires that due process be afforded to migrants, and that due process necessarily, it does absolutely mean some sort of hearing is required. The Supreme Court said what y'all have given these migrants thus far is certainly not conforming with the Fifth Amendment. You are violating the due process clause under the Fifth Amendment. The Supreme Court has not laid out, does that mean 10 days before a hearing, 20 days? What's the notice? Does the notice have to be in English and the language of the country of origin? What type of hearing? They remanded, the Supreme Court did, to the Fifth Circuit for further analysis of those questions. But let there be no doubt, the Supreme Court says that migrants are entitled to due process. Now, I want to live in a country where there is due process. Could due process be slower than we like? Sure. Can due process be messy sometimes? Sure. But it is a system that is supposed to provide the best kind of human system we've been able to come up with to make sure that we're not sending innocent people away to incarceration, or in this case, the unthinkable concentration camps in foreign countries where you're basically sent to rot and die and never hear or see your family again. And so, Cohen, I think that that Supreme Court ruling deserves, I think a little bit more attention than it's been getting. Because right now this regime is in violation of not just any law, but really the core principle of our country. So you add that
process, Ben.
You add that
democracy.
You add that, and the fact that now you have Alina Habba, who's the top federal prosecutor in New Jersey, announcing charges against a Democratic Congresswoman, MacIver, because she showed up to inspect and look at this migrant detention facility in New Jersey. And the ICE officials and private security were like roughing up these Congress members and roughing up the mayor. And Congresswoman MacIver was in all of that. They charged her with serious criminal conduct, a sitting member of Congress. Again, these are not normal times. Then you add to that
and I'm so sorry. Did you listen to Tom Homan? I don't know if we have the clip, but Tom Homan, the statements that he's making, this is a group of fucking thugs, which is really what they are, who have all the levers of power right now. Instead of turning around and saying the truth, oh, well, she acted improperly. And then I know that the moderator, the journalist asked, well, wait, when you said that she acted improperly, is improper act, is that enough for an indictment? I mean, they're really trying to figure out how to incarcerate her. I mean, it's really very, very scary what they're doing. As I wrote in my Substack, this isn't about fear. This is about strategy of creating fear for everybody. It's not a plan. All right. This is an absolute strategy in order to make everybody, whether that's you, Ben, me, whether that's any member of Congress, a judge, just a critic, anybody, fearful that if you say something which does not comport with what the dear leader wants, well, you too can be disappeared. You too can be locked up without having the benefit of habeas corpus. You too will not be able to speak to your attorneys or to get charges against you because there will be no due process rights. This is really such a dangerous group of people.
Couldn't agree more with you there, Cohen. And
Scary.
I saw some other news today too, that HHS, Health and Human Services, and kind of their various sub-agencies now are basically saying that if they consider you to be healthy and able-bodied in their definition, and you're under the age of 65, they're going to prevent you from getting the COVID vaccine. You will be banned from getting the COVID vaccine now. We have a measles outbreak that's currently, I think, being underreported because this Trump regime has gutted all of the kind of data repositories. And now they are affirmatively preventing people who they consider able-bodied, people under the age of 65, from getting the COVID vaccine. And then add to that the ghoulish nature of Donald Trump not even addressing that at least 28 Americans have died in some horrific storms, tornadoes that have rolled through Indiana, Missouri, Kentucky. Kentucky just keeps getting hit hard over and over again. Illinois. Trump doesn't talk about it, won't even mention it. We saw and we heard the mayor of St. Louis begging for FEMA to come into the city because FEMA has not arrived. Not just the mayor of St. Louis. MAGA Republican Senator Josh Hawley used his questioning of Kristi Noem today to say, can you please confirm that you are going to get FEMA into Missouri? Can you please do that? Will you say on the record right now that that's what you will do? And she said, well, I will definitely bring it to Donald Trump's attention. In the past, this was automatic. Storm, FEMA, same time. Not only that, you would prepare with FEMA in advance. And I understand that when it comes to a tornado, it's harder to predict than, say, a hurricane or some other weather events. But you can still predict bad weather events a little bit and the types of conditions that could lead to hurricanes. And now we know that the organization called NOAA, the government agency NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency, which runs NWS, the National Weather Service, they've been gutted. We're not sending up the weather balloons like we used to analyze weather patterns. We're not giving the warnings that used to be given in storms like this. June 1st officially starts hurricane season. And I keep on talking about this over and over again here because I'm a big believer that the most important issues are the ones that are least discussed anywhere else. And the issue that I keep bringing up here over and over again is FEMA, because we have a bad hurricane. We're seeing what's happened with this tornado. We have a bad hurricane and the Trump regime has gutted FEMA. We can see a mass casualty event in the tens of thousands or even more that's actually preventable, but the Trump regime wants to destroy FEMA. It's why I keep on talking about this over and over again, Cohen.
Yeah, look, let me be very clear. One of the reasons why when you see these massive hurricanes and tornadoes, you see the devastation that they leave, down poles, roofs, and houses completely ripped off and blown off the foundation. The reason why we're not seeing devastating numbers of death or massive injuries when these hurricanes or tornadoes end up rummaging through one of these, local towns is because of the National Weather Service, because people are given at least enough warning that they pack up, they move to, proper shelters that, can protect them. And then everybody starts to worry about and deal with the loss of the homes, the property damage, and so on. Your property you could always replace. Your head, you cannot. And that's why to cut National Weather Service, it is such an injustice to do. There's actually a system that works. We know that it works because, thank God, loss of life is limited during these natural catastrophes. And then to go ahead and to ignore climate change, which is what this is about. It's not just to ignore climate change, to not give a shit about people, about the American, about Americans who are going to be living in areas that are going to be decimated. This is such negligence. It's like in law, we would call it gross negligence on part of this administration.
I want to show that Tom Homan clip that you reference. And to me, it also relates to the recent Supreme Court ruling based on an emergency petition filed by the Trump regime to revoke temporary protected status to the Venezuelans throughout the country, 350,000. But the biggest concentration of Venezuelans in the country are in South Florida. And a lot of them are Trump supporters,
Yep.
Venezuelans for Trump, who Trump promised, we're not going after you. We're not going to revoke your TPS. Don't worry. We're just going after the quote unquote bad guys. And you had a lot of these Venezuelan leaders, the mayor of Doral, the council in Doral, Venezuelans and Cubans, leaders who are saying, vote Trump. Trump's, we don't like Biden. We like Trump. When Biden was the one protecting the temporary protected status, and Donald Trump was the one who literally was taking it away from you and wants to send you back to Maduro and send you back to Castro. And that's what he's going to do. Tom Homan on this clip I'm going to play when we come back, he confirms. He goes, he says it clearly. No matter what you did, criminal or not criminal, I don't care. If you're here not lawfully, which you're not here lawfully, if you were under temporary protected status or you previously got asylum and the Trump regime revoked it, we catch you, we're sending you either to the concentration camps in El Salvador, we're sending you back to Maduro, or now they're in talks with Libya, they're in talks with like Rwanda, like they're in talks with other people as well to send and separate families, and engage in this real horrific torture. All right, let's take our first quick break of the show. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to Michael Cohen's YouTube channel at The Michael Cohen Show. Subscribe to the Mea Culpa audio podcast wherever it's available. Just search Mea Culpa. Patreon.com/Political Beatdown is a great place to subscribe. Cohen and I next week will have another Zoom meeting there. We're excited to meet you. Let's take our first quick break of the show.
You ever try launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you something. It's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. Because when I started Political Beatdown with Ben, I thought, come on, man, how hard can this be? Script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I feel like I was decoding a damn matrix. Now, if only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%. You hear that? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your podcast descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you are. I mean, not naming names. And you need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/beat. That's shopify.com/beat to start your $1 per month trial today. That's Shopify, shopify.com/beat. When your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic with no hesitation. I mean, you need it, and it's not something most guys can fix themselves. Look, I know I can't, and men should think the exact same way about ED. But the reality is, you might be hesitant to seek help. Well, thankfully, through HIMSS, you can get access to personalized ED treatment without ever stepping outside your door. HIMSS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort, get a load of that, of your own couch. HIMSS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable Hardmints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. You hear that? 95% cheaper. The process, it's also 100% online, so that there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. What you do is you just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. And if prescribed, your medication, well, it ships directly to you for free. And there's no insurance needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Now, with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMSS can help you find the ED option that works best for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/beat. That's HIMS.com/beat for your personalized ED treatment options. Again, that's hims.com/beat. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required, and price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Welcome back to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Cohen. Let's show that clip now of the really just despicable borders are that Tom Homan guy. He was asked a question. Well, you know, you're clearly rounding up people with no criminal records. They pointed to a bunch of stories, like there was a 19-year-old, Georgia girl who was here, living here since she was young, was not a citizen, no criminal record, going to college, living a productive life here in the United States, and has been in a detention center, has not been able to leave, arrested, locked up. And you'll just see, and Homan, when he talks about it too, like he's just a creepy dude. Like you can see that he really enjoys inflicting pain on people, a very strange man who must have lived one of a very dark life in the inner chambers of what's going on there, because you don't get that sick like this unless there's something else going on.
I mean, that young girl was 4 years old when she came to this country, and as Ben said, she's in college right now, doing well, working the whole 9 yards. They pulled her over for a traffic stop, which, by the way, was an improper. It was even an improper traffic stop. Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Play the clip.
Let's play it.
A Georgia college student was mistakenly, if the officers involved acknowledged they mistakenly pulled her over. She's being detained right now. Her father said he was never worried about her. She came over here at 4, never been in any trouble. She's a college student. Because you had said you would prioritize gang members, rapists, and criminals. She obviously is none of those things. Has that changed? Has that priority changed?
No. What I have said is we're going to prioritize public safety threats and national security threats, and that's what we're doing. But just because we prioritize somebody doesn't mean we walk away from illegal alien. If you're in the country legally, I've said this 1,000 times, you're not off the table. You're just not being prioritized. I'm not familiar with this case. I don't know if she has a criminal history. I don't know if she's an overstay. I don't know if she's here illegally. I'm just not familiar with this case.
I just don't know if it's this case. All I can tell you is if you're here and it's illegal, you know, they can't turn around and they can't say something which is honest or decent or American. Listen, like everybody else that's with us right now, I too don't want these gang members in our country, these criminals in our country that, you know, that snuck in and so on. Great, deport them after due process, but deport them. This young girl hasn't done a single thing wrong in her entire life. In fact, she didn't even commit the traffic violation that caused the police to pull her over in the first place. And, you know, while I appreciate the fact that the father is trying to be optimistic, oh, I'm not concerned, yada, 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 and so on, I think he's absolutely out of his mind, and he fails to fully comprehend the evil, and I'm going to say it again, the evil of people like Tom Homan and others in the administration that are hell-bent on deporting everybody. You see, it's not about her. She's just merely a number, and that's what it's all about. They want to increase the number of people that they send out so that way they can throw it like red meat to their MAGA base and to America and say, you see, the president is living up to his campaign promise. He told you that he was going to get X number of people out of the country, and we are on track within which to do that. So they don't care if the person is innocent or not. They don't care if they have actually deported people who are Americans, right? I mean, how crazy is this that they were taking them into custody simply because they weren't able to validate that they were American citizens quick enough. I mean, this whole process lacks process, and that's why it's as screwed up as it actually is.
You talk about the power of propaganda to convince people to focus on a whole set of issues that really doesn't impact them, and to not focus on the issues that impact them the most. I mean, that's a real powerful and potent thing when you can get that to take place. Like at a most basic level, if you don't care about yourself dying, waking up dead, what is your main kind of concerns here? Like let's start with the idea that life has a value, right? These are all the pro-lifers, right? I mean, but they've now subordinated their own existence to a set of conspiracies that are not tethered to their life. I mean, I would put actually beyond myself living, now that I'm a father, and I'm sure you agree with me, Cohen, on this, my daughter. I would put my daughter living above me living, but I would say my daughter living a healthy life is the most important issue to me. Because there's no other issue that is even in the realm of proximity.
Because, Ben, you are a normal human being. You are a normal father.
But I'm telling you, even
every decent father would lay down their life for their children. Some of us go a little further, right? Where we would do the same for our spouse. It's why, as I have stated so many times, I took a plea on a Friday when I first found out what the charges were for a Monday, because they were going to indict my wife as being a co-conspirator to the hush money payment. And that's the way it should be. Again, Ben, because you are a normal, decent, good person. When you lack those qualities, And
But
by the way,
let's-
I'm just being nice to you because it was his birthday yesterday.
Well, but
right?
so
In another
let's-
couple of days, I'll be mean to him again. But Ben, you are a decent human being. What if you lack that decency gene?
But then you move on to what is beaming through that cable news each and every day. And some of the most basic issues, right, of existence, of living, of having human beings just be alive are not what's being focused on. Instead, they create this theater and drama around all of these other issues. And the focus is brought away from the most basic things. If the federal government is going to dismantle FEMA, a federal emergency management agency, well, then what the hell are we paying taxes for at all? If you're going to dismantle NIH, CDC, if you're going to now prohibit me because you claim I'm an able-bodied under 65-year-old to get a COVID vaccine, I'm prevented because I live in the United States from accessing a vaccine that could keep me alive. What are you doing as a government? Talking about this story in Georgia, what could be worse for a father than to have their daughter locked in a detention center, unclear if they're going to be sent to a concentration camp in El Salvador? Like, why can't
there is one scenario, Ben, and we saw it, and we saw this feckless fucknut, all right, Homan turn around and actually do it. They deported a 4-year-old child, remember, with metastatic cancer. All right, so imagine that the father is here, the mom and the child gonzo, not even knowing whether or not the child is going to a place where they have treatment for cancer. That is beyond heartless. The fact that they could not see past that. Why not just go then into the hospitals, go into the emergency rooms and find these folks? It is so grotesque what they are doing. It's I can't believe that this is the United States of America and that there's still so many people who turn around and that they are supporting this. I'm baffled still that anybody and I'm not talking about millions, I'm talking about any one person can actually turn around and say what they are doing is fine. Look, again, the president of the United States, whether you like Donald Trump or you despise him, every president comes to the White House with their own agenda, whatever it might be. I didn't like certain things that Joe Biden did. I didn't like things that Trump did in his first term, many things. I didn't like things that Barack Obama did or Bill Clinton or the Bushes. There are things that you like, things that you don't. It's based upon yourself. However, nothing that anybody else did was cruel and inhuman and unconstitutional and un-American. And if, in fact, as I believe that we need to revamp our immigration policy because it has been ignored, kind of like our, our radar systems at the airports. It has been ignored for far too long, and it needs a major, major overhaul. That doesn't mean that you tear it down and that, you instead of having a process, all you have is cruelty and theatrics.
And it's just that dehumanization. It's what the Nazis did. It's what authoritarian regimes do when they convince you that life is not actually precious. And you're so focused on all of these other things that the regime is beaming down, people just lose sight of what the hell are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? And, Trump, for the MAGA Republicans, is this vehicle where he'll be the ultimate weapon of mass distraction. He will say any lie imaginable and run interference for that dehumanization. And it is natural for him like it is breathing for others to lie. It just, it doesn't, he doesn't have what people, that's his superpower is the supervillain power, that it's literally anything. You just lie, you make it up, you don't care, and you just keep on pushing the fraud. You repeat it over and over and over again. And like the press conference he held this morning in Capitol Hill, he's going around and saying, even though we know this budget deficit, we have to, this budget bill, we have to raise the debt ceiling by $4 or $5 trillion. The scam, and you and I said this is going to be the scam a few weeks back, is that when he goes to the Middle East, he lies about the numbers, about the amount of money he's brought in. And the numbers to him, they don't have to be tethered to reality. For we, the people, it does, because $100 can mean that we're going to starve or not starve.
Ben, he literally goes from $5.1 trillion, right, to $7 trillion. It could even be up as high as $9 trillion. He literally adds $2, $3, $4 trillion in a single breath, as if $1 trillion isn't a shit ton of money, right? Mm-hmm. As if $5 trillion. By the way, where is the journalists? Where is mainstream or cable news media to ask him the follow-up question? Mr. President, a follow-up question. How much of that actually has come into cash? And is it actually in the Federal Reserve, or is it in contracts? Is it on a payout schedule? Can you tell us, you say that $5, $6, $7, $9 trillion has come in. Did it come in cash? Is it a wire transfer? Did a government pledge a note? Can you tell us how that money is here in America? But nobody asks that question. Well, why not? Why not? Somebody tells you that there's $5 trillion, $7 trillion, $9 trillion invested in America that is already here. And I'm just curious to know, okay, by who, how much, and where's the money, right? Show me the money. Let me hear you say it, Ben.
Qatar,
Let me hear you say it, Ben. Say it with me.
Show me the money. Show me the money. I'll show you what Qatar's annual GDP is. It's $200 billion a year. So how can Qatar, whose entire annual GDP is $200 billion a year, pledge $1.2 trillion, $2 trillion? 6 times their entire GDP is being pledged. Come on, does that make any sense to you at all? Like, it doesn't. It is made up false fraud numbers from a guy who makes up false and fraud numbers. I mean, that's Ben, his thing.
Sure, Ben. You remember I was talking to you about this a couple of days ago when I first heard this this $1.4 trillion or $1.2 trillion, coming in from Qatar. And I turned around and I said, you know where I think there's massive misstatements being made? Is it 1.2 or 1.4 trillion US dollars, or is it that 1.2 trillion real? Because if it's in there, if it's a big difference, if it's in their real money, it's about 1 to 4. So 1 real is equal, 1 real dollar is equal to 25 cents. So you're really talking about somewhere about $250 or $239 billion. I can see a pledge like that, because when you're talking about over a 10-year period, right, you're not worrying about the fact that your GDP per year is $260 billion. All right. Now you've got yourself good and covered. That's the problem. Nobody's asking these questions. They're afraid. You know who is asking these questions? Ben Meiselas is, Midas Touch Network is, Michael Cohen is, Brett and Jordy are, right? Lev Parnas is asking. Michael Popak is asking. We refuse to sit back and not ask the obvious questions. And maybe it's not polite to ask these questions, but they're necessary, right? They're necessary so that we can actually get an answer. We can actually understand what is really going on here and whether or not the president of the United States, as Ben said it, and I say it a little different, which is that he lies the way that you breathe, is actually lying to you right to your face.
Well, Cohen, isn't this the same thing at just a bigger scale of what he was found liable for fraud of in New York, right? You know, he would say moral, and it's almost the same numbers too, right? Like, but just billions and trillions. But for him, there's no distinction, right? For him, Mar-a-Lago, what did he say, was $1.4 billion or $1.8 billion. And I think everybody believes, look, it's probably, if it wasn't a club, if it was actually a residence and you didn't try to manipulate it downward, Donald, to pay less taxes, you're the reason why it was 28 million, because you wanted to pay less property taxes on it by calling it a country club. But let's just say it was $400-500 million. Okay, you can convince me of that. That's a lot of money. That's still a big amount of money. Like, okay, but he's got to go from 400 million to 1.4 billion and add a billion. And then that's not true. And that's and he's doing the same here. And this is what we warned about. And we got to take a quick break to go this. And I want to get your thoughts on this because you're intimately involved. But you know, when he's doing it at Mar-a-Lago, I mean, Cohen, it impacts you differently than other Americans based on your history with the guy. But it doesn't. What he's doing at Mar-a-Lago, you know, has less of an impact on most Americans. He defrauded, you know, New York. That's what he's been found liable for. But those actions are not going to lead to, FEMA not being sent into where it needs to go at Mar-a-Lago. It's not going to lead to critical cancer research not being done or the experimental treatment that may save your life not happening. It's not going to lead to veterans getting fired. He's doing the same Mar-a-Lago, Atlantic City crap on our economy, which is why foreign governments are like, get the money the hell out of it. Get it out. We'll take our last quick break of the show at the Michael Cohen Show YouTube. Subscribe there. The Mea Culpa podcast, patreon.com/political beatdown to meet me and Michael Cohen next week. Let's take our last quick break of the show.
You ever stand in the grocery store staring at a piece of fish, wondering if it's going to taste like the ocean or more like regret? I've been there. And after everything that I've seen and everything that I've done, trust is a luxury, especially when it comes to what I put on my plate. And that's why I'm telling you straight, Wild Alaskan Company, it's the only seafood that I trust, period. When the first box showed up at my door, I was skeptical. I mean, wild caught, perfectly portioned, frozen right off the damn boat. I mean, it sounded too good to be true. But I opened it. I cooked up some coho salmon, pan-seared with a little olive oil and some sea salt. And I swear to you, I haven't looked back. The flavor, clean, rich, real. The kind of fish that makes you realize just how bad that you had it before. And here's the kicker. It's 100% wild caught. No antibiotics, no GMOs, no factory farming. Just fish from pristine Alaskan waters. Caught with care, shipped with purpose, and meant to be savored. Every bite supports sustainable fishing communities. I mean, it's seafood with a soul. So listen, not all fish are the same. And if you want seafood that you can trust, go right now to wildalaskan.com/beat and get $35 off your first box of wild caught greatness. That's Wild Alaskan, WILDALASKAN.com/beat. No risk, no bullshit, just the best damn fish that you'll ever eat. So thanks again to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. Now go eat like you mean it.
Welcome back to Political Beatdown.
Did I make you hungry there, Ben?
I know. I mean, your ad reads get me motivated. And I hope they're getting the audience motivated as well, because those pro-democracy sponsors play a big role in the growth of our independent media network. And so we're thankful for them. It's great stuff. Like, it's stuff you're going to want anyway.
Really good.
And they help our program. And Jordy negotiates the discount codes with them to make sure you're getting great deals. Chef's kiss, in the words of the last one. All right. let's just take a look at this. So here's Donald Trump saying he made $7 trillion on his Middle East trip, which is a lie, after a minute before saying it was 5 trillion. And that's why we don't have to worry about the budget adding 5 trillion to the deficit, because he said, I've already made the money back, which is false. Play this clip.
They respect our country again. They were going to go to China. China was going to take over those countries 100%. They were dealing with China because they weren't treated right by the last administration. And they have tremendous economic power. They have more money than anybody. We probably have more money, but we have other things. They are very cash rich, to put it mildly. And they're spending 5.1 trillion. Probably it's going to be 7 trillion by the time we stop. And somebody said every other president goes and leaves and spends money, gives other countries money. I'm the only one that goes and takes money back. When you think of it, I said that's an interesting statement. I never thought of it that way. But we have this is really just a pep talk. We have a very unified House and we have a very unified Senate.
Let me say this to you, Ben. Let me say this to you. There were so many lines that came out of Trump's mouth right then and there that are so inaccurate. I think the most significant one is when he says, that they're really a rich country and that, maybe richer than, no, we're probably richer. Let me be blunt, all right? Because it's just the way I am. Their GDP for a year is somewhere in the ballpark of about $270 billion. Our 2023 GDP, ready for this one? $27.23 trillion. Now, if I have to put that into an analogy, maybe one that dear old Donald and the dipshits that are surrounding him, like the fucking puppet, MAGA Mike Johnson sitting there nodding his head like a motherfucking bobblehead, all right? It would be like Mike Tyson in his prime fighting a nursery school kid and people somehow turning around and saying, yeah, the nursery school kid could win. That's how stupid a comment like that is. Do you not know how big the United States economy is? How big our GDP is? Do you not know that we are $10 trillion a year GDP greater than the number 2, which is China? And yet you're comparing us to Qatar? I mean, are you serious?
So Cohen, Qatar's GDP, 200 billion. United Arab Emirates annual GDP about 400 billion. So add them together, 600 billion. Saudi Arabia about 1 trillion, say 1.1 trillion. You add that all up, and I'll round up to be nice. Say all 3 of those countries together are 2 trillion. So Canada, who Donald Trump views as being very weak in attacks, has a bigger GDP than all 3 of those Middle East countries combined. And Trump thinks Canada is weak and not wealthy, when Canada is far wealthy and far more powerful than all of those countries combined, and it's not even close. California's GDP alone is about $4.5 trillion. California has the 4th biggest GDP of any country in the world. And Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans continue to beat down on California. California, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, and other blue states, by and large, are donor states, meaning they give significantly more than they take from the federal government. The red states and the Trumpiest of Trump states are the taker states. They would not be able to exist but for the contributions of the blue state. They are failed states, the same way they're modeled after failed countries like Hungary and Argentina and El Salvador. They have issues that cause their education and ability to live long lives, and you name the category, to be at a far worse rate than the blue states. Yet, even in this budget, it's red states by and large attacking blue states. And then you have some MAGA Republicans from the blue states saying, why the hell are you capping our SALT deductions, the state and local tax deductions, when we're the donor states and you're the taker states? And the MAGAs and the Trumps like, well, because you've got a blue governor. And the point is they're trying to screw over actually the remaining wealth centers in the United States. And by the way, Cohen, you make a great point. You go through Trump's statement there on these are the richest countries in the world. Like, they're not, number one. Number two, they actually were not at risk for falling into China's grasp. America has significant military presence in a lot of these countries anyway. The big concern that America should be focused on are countries like Japan, South Korea, Latin America, India, Pakistan, and of course, protecting our traditional allies like Canada and Europe, in addition to, you know, the other countries that I'm mentioning. But what was Xi Jinping doing last week? He was actually doing real deals with Latin American countries in our backyard, creating alliances and relationships that's going to push right up to our borders, basically, or very close. That's what they were doing while Donald Trump was out there parading around with these, you know, with these fake deals. I want to show you this clip as well. This is Trump being asked, if you've promised to lower people's grocery prices, then why are you cutting food assistance? And Trump's response, yet another lie, is that groceries are getting so cheap right now and food is so affordable. By cutting food assistance, we're getting more food for people. Here, play the clip.
You campaigned on lowering the price of groceries. How do you justify cutting food assistance in this bill?
Let me just tell you, the cut is going to give everybody much more food because prices are coming way down. Groceries are down. Eggs. You told me about eggs. You asked me a question about eggs my first week. You said eggs. I said, I just got here. Tell me about eggs. And it was going through the roof. You know that eggs now are way down. Everybody's buying eggs. Groceries down. Energy's down. Gasoline is now they're buying gasoline now for $1.99. If you look back, you'll see $3.50, $4. This country, we're going to lose this country. Our country now is respected all over the world. All over the world we're respected. We were a laughingstock.
I would say, could you imagine if former President Biden? Yeah, this is nothing true. The average gas price is $3.21. There's not a single state, not a single one, that has gas at $1.99.
I looked. I went on. There's an actual website that you could track gasoline prices throughout the country. There's no country that has $1.09. There's no city in America or state that has $1.99. But you know what, Ben? When we started off and we said that the guy lies with impunity, that he lies the way that you breathe, that's a perfect example. And he wants to always go back to his talking points because he doesn't think well on his feet. Remember, you asked me the questions about eggs. Okay. It was called the avian flu, you asshole. Enough already. Okay, enough with the fucking eggs and the egg roll over at the Easter egg hunt over at the White House and so on. It's enough. You know, what happened to the release of all the hostages before you took over the presidency? Before you even were getting into office, you said that you'd have all the hostages returned. Sure. And that the Israel-Hamas war would come to an end. Abso-fucking-lutely. And then on top of that, you would also have the Russia-Ukraine war stopped. Instead, not only do we still have all that, you have India and Pakistan fighting. You have Trump still turning around and claiming that we're going after Greenland, which I understand Steve Bannon is going over there soon. And then on top of that, you're talking about Canada is going to become our 51st state. And then you talk about U.S. taking over Panama Canal and so on and so forth. You know, the biggest problem that we all have is the fact that they lie so often And the lies are so chaotic that it's actually difficult to keep track of the number of lies and the frequency and the volume that they come at. And that's what we do. That's what Ben and I do. And by the way, Sheila, there is no host here. Ben and I are hosts of Political Beatdown. If I bother you, I would suggest maybe not coming here. Because our goal, by the way, is to build a community that is so big and so loud and so vocal that we will not allow this to continue. We will not allow our Constitution to be trampled on. We will not allow the American flag to become a prop like a MAGA cape. We just won't allow it. And together, we will do it. And that's why I ask each and every one of you, Midas Touch Network on fire, exploding, the biggest independent news source out there right now. The biggest by far beating out on the Joe Rogans. The volume on the digital is greater than that of Fox News. And that's who Midas Touch Network is. That's what we are. We are a community of like-minded. We will not agree on everything. Ben and I talk about this all the time. We don't agree on everything. But you know what we agree on? We agree on making and ensuring the Constitution of the United States remains intact for another 250 years. And so, look, somebody's got to get the two-finger salute, and it has to be that bobblehead clown standing next to Trump, not saying a goddamn thing, allowing the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to use him as a prop, as he allows him to continue to spew misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation to the American people. And with that, MAGA Mike Johnson, you fucking jerk off, right? The only thing I can say to you, grow a pair of cojones, all right? And until you do that, fuck you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Political Beatdown. Make sure you subscribe to the Mea Culpa podcast wherever audio podcasts are available. Search Mea Culpa, number 1. Number 2, subscribe to the Michael Cohen YouTube channel. Just search Michael Cohen Show, and you will find the Michael Cohen Show. Subscribe there. Go to patreon.com/Political Beatdown. Next week, Michael Cohen and I, after one of our shows, will host a Zoom meeting where you can ask Michael or myself any questions that you may have. I want to thank all the Beatdown Brigaders for everything you do. Thank you for your birthday wishes yesterday. It meant the world to me, and it was a busy trip to New York last week. Back in LA, grinding it out, spreading the truth, building the network with people like Michael Cohen and others by my side. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a good one. Shout out Brigaders. Shout out Midas Mighty.
Boom.